Testing. Hopefully my cell reception's good enough here to do a live feed. So I'll give it a minute. See what happens. A disengaging from linear mindset. And what the heck is that anyway? So I thought I'd just do a kind of a review through the different disengaging from linear mindset posts and feeds. I kind of try to point to some things and, creating awareness of what that actually is. But disengaging from linear mindset, colonial mindset, one of my favorite sayings from Albert Einstein is that you can't fix a problem in the same mindset that created it. And another thing that I'd like to say, something that I like to say is that we're not going to buy or legislate our species into the future. So, everything's about species growth, which by default points to personal development, which of course is connected to our thought process and cyclical thought process, natural thought process, right? So if we say linear mindset, that is saying a static. So there's static thoughts or lack of thoughts, static ideas, lots of delusions, false narratives, even words and concepts that people put in their heads and take them as truth and try and go that way, when actually what they're doing, they're creating roadblocks that keep people from thinking, right? You might have to bear with me a lot. I'm going to try and cycle back on some of these things. So if we think that we know something, the common linear mindset, common society says we know it, we put a label on it, like known, and then there's no more thought about that. And that's a linear mindset, and that's keeping us from growing, to where a natural thought process knows that we can't really know something. We can't know, the definitive answers to anything, and a lot of things that are in this realm of not to get too woo-woo, but like spirituality and thought process and species development and that sort of thing. We need to keep open minds and say that, as we're going forward, well, these are theories, these are things that, we accept them as truths, but know that, that could change as we proceed. And then the point, again, to draw parallels that people might be familiar with, Socrates, one of his famous quotes is, to truly be knowledgeable, we first need to know that we know nothing. And that points to keeping, that open mind. So natural thought process is taking everything into account. If we take everything into account, that we know that we can't actually take everything into account. There has to be space for more development. As we grow, we have to keep space and allow free space for the universe to come in, and for energy exchange, and for instincts. We can't just 1 + 1 linear, hey, I'm going to do this, and this, right? And so here's our goals, right? Our goals from here to here. But in actuality, no matter who you are, a natural thought process, the universe, life path takes you like this. And it's a very, very zigzag. It's not a straight line from here to here, right? No straight lines. That's linear. natural process goes here. We might get from here to here, but if we do, it's going to be, like this. Everything takes longer because we're dynamic, living entities. So, talking about linear thought process, linear mindset versus natural thought process. And so I'm going to go back and say that, so we can't buy or legislate our species into the future. Okay, so there's a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. So how do we rise up and engage our challenges without using monetary or legislative solutions? All right? How do we do that? Whatever the challenge is, how do we do that? Okay, so my answer, all that stuff, all these systems and processes, all these man-made things, clocks, monetary system, legal system, governmental system, right? Those are all man-made things, right? And so a couple of like maybe stepstones, mental stepstones. First of all, we can't build processes and then not be able to get out of them. Okay, so we can't build an elaborate wet paper bag and not be able to break through them, right? We created these entities. We created a clock, and yet let ourselves get subordinated behind that clock, right? We created rules and standards. We created laws and then let ourselves get subordinated behind laws. Where's our instincts for right and wrong? Where's real time? So understanding how people actually work in our personal development, by growing ourselves, we have to grow ourselves to a point where we're intelligent enough not to be subordinated by static things that we create, and to be able to embrace concepts like, okay, well, no matter what laws or what philosophy or what ideas we have now, okay, well, I can write down the best of whatever I have right now, but is that going to be the best that's available tomorrow or a year down the line or 10 years down the line? And we have this governmental process that's X amount of years old, and we have a monetary process that's X amount of years old, and we have laws that are X amount of years old, and then we go back and try and work through those, or try to work forward through those, right? So we have to understand the limits of these tools that we make. To have laws, to have written laws, okay, that's good, but and those are good baselines, right? And a clock is obviously, that can be a useful tool, but we can't like hold up, this clock or this law right here, so we can't see, and so we can't use our instincts, and so we can't take things the way they would be naturally. We can't say, oh, we have an hour to do this. Oh, well, what if it really takes an hour and a half? What do you do? Does it not get done? What happens? Whatever it is, it takes as long as it takes. Right? That's like the classic, how long does it take to become a medicine man? Okay. So, life is all growth. There's no time. There's no time as related to a clock in our growth and our development. It is what it is. So to get rid of these, when I'm talking about disengaging from linear mindset, You know, we're getting rid of these concepts of, you know, what is the clock really? You know, can we use these things in a mature way? Are we mature enough to realize the limits of their usage? You know, the monetary system. Can we say that money is, you know, nothing more than, you know, what we used to use, you know, pretty shells or whatever? I think, you know, money and even plastic facilitates trade. Trade's good. If you know me at all, you know I'm a big advocate of trade and business and those sort of things. But money doesn't hold value. It just represents value. I think that money's biggest value, printed currency's biggest value, is in its actual lack of value. If you follow that, right? So if we could trade dog shit, you know, it'd be messy, of course, but the same thing. Just we agree that this represents value, you know, and whatever it is, you know, three nickel-sized pretty rocks represents $15, you know, or you know, four $half-dollar size pretty shells represents $100 or whatever. We can trade whatever we want, you know, to represent value, and then that facilitates trade. But we can't put real value on something that has no real value. We can't say, oh well, this dollar is worth, this piece of paper is worth, you know, 100, using spoken language, you know, what's the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill? You know, is a $100 bill 100 times more difficult to manufacture than a $1 bill? See, there's no natural intrinsic value in the monetary system. It's not water, it's not food, it's not shelter, it doesn't have a natural scarcity. Therefore, it's actually, its benefit is in its lack of value. We could make money out of recycled plastic. We could do anything, you know. We could use monopoly money. The point being that our people need to mature enough to use that in a mature way and just realize we're just trading. You know, same thing, and we can't blame inanimate objects for our problems. We can't blame money, drugs, guns, you know, whatever. We can't blame inanimate objects for our problems. Getting back to linear mindset, you know, we can't put words that represent ideas and in our mind. So I'm going to try that again. So we have a lot of mental roadblocks based around words, and you know, English language is good for a lot of things, but we have to understand the limitations of it. You know, how does the English language represent terms like love and God and those kind of things, which I don't even care for those words particularly, and mainly because some of these things, some concepts just can't be, by default, can't be replicated in spoken language. You know, everything that's a word was first idea, a thought, feelings, using words to you know, try and explain these. We can try and explain them with words, and we can kind of understand, but the words, just like the money, they represent value, but they don't intrinsically hold value, right? Words and money both have those things in common. Words and money both represent value, but they don't hold value. They don't have intrinsic value, and they can only hold value that we agree on, right? And we all know that. Someone's only, you know, hey, do you trust what someone's saying? You know, do you think that, whoops, proselyte. You think that, does this person, do their words hold value in this circumstance? But when we put those words in our head, that can be a mental roadblock. That's a linear mindset to just fill our minds with words and say that, oh, we know it, and to use words like, oh, God, love, intelligence, richness. What's richness? What does that mean to the individual person? Is that by default? How many people, when they think of richness, how many people default to monetary aspects? Wealth. How many people default to monetary aspects? So the disengaging from linear mindset, most people I know say colonized, colonial mindset, linear mindset, colonial mindset. It's refers to straightening, it's the delusion of straightening the learning curve, and there is no straightening the learning curve. There's just the delusion of straightening the learning curve. Channeling Trudell here. Yeah, Trudell will talk a lot about linear mindset. But we have to be cyclical. We have our school system. How do you say you're learning at this rate, right? 4 years for college. We go to school from 9 to 3 or whatever the kids are doing now. That's straightening that's trying to straighten that learning curve. That's not really a natural learning system. Now, we could have all that information, but people need to learn really at their own pace, because there's so many other things that come into play along our path. And so let's say, okay, well, I want to learn to be what the hell do I want to learn to be? A cabinet maker. Okay, well, here's the processes, and here's like the hard skills that you learn. But along that way, the universe is going to say, oh, and you need to learn about whatever, women and authority and food and whatever else, right? And everyone's going to go through this process, on their own pace. And so another, disengaging from linear mindset is understanding what natural thought process is, and the things that are perpetuating linear mindset in our society, like school, and it's like, okay, here, everyone has this cookie cutter information, so everyone knows the same stuff. Okay, great, but is that actual thought process? Is that critical thinking skills? Is that the best way to disseminate common information? School. And then, of course, the governmental system and the monetary system. Is this the best way to do things? Okay. Is it the only way to do things? So again, let's back out from that, and let's say that we may need to use these systems, and they may even be valid systems. I think the monetary system is very valid if it was used right, if it was used right, if our society could become mature enough to understand its limitations. I think there's a lot of benefit to having processes in place and standards, but our standards can't be like the rule above all. We can't hold up laws for everything, and like our court system, our judicial systems, it's a freaking joke, and not look at things on an individual basis. Funny as shit, I hear all the thing about Standing Rock, and they can't, water protectors can't bring in treaty rights and all these other things. Well, hell, that's what the whole damn thing's about. How do you say you're going to be fair and say, oh, we're going to be fair and we're going to look at this, but not take into account all of the information. So in a natural process, all of the information would be taken into account. How can you say you're thinking? How can you say you're doing any kind of analysis without actually taking everything into account? How do we take things into account without accounting for our natural thought process? So anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. I was just doing this the other day, and someone said something about, what the hell are you talking about? And they still might. But disengaging from linear mindset versus natural thought process. And, I think it's important to keep conversations going about how our species actually develops, how we can develop most efficiently. Everything emanates from the inside out. When we grow ourselves, that's what makes change. It's not going to be from the outside in. We're not going to buy or legislate ourselves into the future. We need to actually grow ourselves and understand ourselves on a human level, without clocks, without government, without money. Really know what makes us tick. How do we operate naturally the best? How are we most efficient? How are we the most intelligent? Everything else comes after that. We have to be people first. We have to be people, and we have to let ourselves, everybody needs to go through their own process. And there's so many traditional lessons there. But anyway, that's it. Everything emanates from the inside out. Personal development is what it is, and that's all that it is. And we wish everybody good luck with that, because that's a really, really deep subject. And thanks for hanging out while I muse about it. And everyone, have a good evening. Take care.